Hello, my good friends! Hi, I'm making this video directly after I made my 5 worst video, so the crap about the hair still stands. I've given up. So I'm here to talk about my 5 favorite books that I read this year still. We got 10 minutes before New Year, so maybe we'll get a live New Year reaction as I'm filming this, but the 5 best books I read this year. Let's talk about them. Somebody's setting off fireworks early. Come on, set your watch. Anyway, the 5th best book I read this year was technically a reread. Like, I read it when I was probably way too young to read it, and I didn't, fully grasp it. So, I mean, yeah, it's like a half of a reread because I really didn't get it when I was younger. But that is The Other Boleyn Girl by Philippa Gregory. I find this book ethically problematic because Anne Boleyn's last words before she got her head chopped off brutally were basically, if anybody's going to tell my story, then please tell it kindly. And I think when we go this far back in time, we forget that these were real people. Anne Boleyn's dying wish was essentially that authors don't libel her. And it's hard because, yes, it's fiction, and the story was amazing. The characters, I guess it feels weird to call them that because they're real people, but the characters were great, and the story about Anne Boleyn's sister, who I think before Philippa Gregory wrote that, really nobody knew who she was. Mary Boleyn, she is actually Anne's older sister in real life, born around 1499. In the book, she's younger, but she wasn't in real life. She was like 5 years older than Anne. And she has an affair with the king, and it's a very public affair, which it wasn't in real life. I'll cite my sources. I actually read a book about her. And she was kind of like maligned by history. It just, what was in this book was not true, yet it was still such a good story. Everybody knows Anne Boleyn as the cunning, heartless homewrecker. And if you read about Anne Boleyn, she wasn't really like that. Like, okay, yes, she got involved with a married man. I'll probably make another video about this, but she is just conniving and heartless and evil in The Other Boleyn Girl. And Mary is virginal and sweet and loving and happy. And my favorite quote from that book is actually from George Boleyn, who was the youngest but was portrayed as the oldest in that book. Is he's saying to Mary, he says to her, "You can smile when your heart is breaking because you're a girl." I love that line. It's very powerful in my opinion, especially when we think about what life was like for women back then. I have so many reservations and so many thoughts about this book, but that doesn't change how much I love the story. I absolutely love it, and it's probably one of the best places to start when you're reading Philippa Gregory book. What I'm gonna say is you should probably either start with the White King. Sorry, I'm responding to something really quick. The White Queen, which is about Elizabeth Woodville, and that's the Cousins' War part of the series, or the War of the Roses, or you should start with The Other Boleyn Girl. So until about 2016, they were actually 2 different series, but Philippa Gregory continued writing in that world, and now they're like all one series. There's like 14 books. But if you want to start reading in more of the medieval time period, start with the White Queen. If you're wanting to start in the Tudor period, the Tudor court, Henry VIII, early modern period, start with The Other Boleyn Girl. I think you'll really enjoy it. I mean, I've really never even met anybody who doesn't like that book. And honestly, I take this stuff seriously because I am a historical fiction writer, but at the end of the day, yes, it is just a story. But since I write historical fiction, I tend to think about these things a little bit more than I think the average reader would. So I very much encourage all of you just go out and find out for yourself. All right, fourth best series I read was the Unwind series, or fourth best book. Guys, I can't put this all into one book. I'm cheating here. Yes, 5 books. So the Unwind series, and my favorite is actually called Unbound. I think it's a collection of short stories set in the Unwind world. Um, but my favorite would probably out of the 4 that make up the main series would probably be the first one. We're introduced to 3 characters that are going to be unwound, which basically their organs are harvested and they're retroactively aborted by their parents because they're troublemakers. And so it's about these 3 kids, 3 teenagers, and how they fight, they rage against the machine kind of thing to stay alive. But they're not really dying. They're living in a divided state. So it'd be like, I don't know, if somebody lost an arm in a truck accident, if I had been unwound by my parents, they would get my arm and all that, like your lungs, your heart, your brain, whatever, just organ harvesting. Because abortion has been outlawed in this world. Pretty timely, right? I was actually reading this when RVW was overturned, so it hit pretty hard with me. But I really liked it because, oops, this fell. Because it's very critical of religion, and it's also very critical of the troubled teen industry. If you want to know about my experience with the troubled teen industry, I'll link the video. I was actually abused in a group home because I was a problem child, a troubled teen, and this book is so critical on that, and it's something that needs to be talked about because it's taken long enough for us to realize how bad these like wilderness programs and reform schools are, and Unwind shows how bad it could possibly go. So there's so much to this series. It's really 4 books plus a short story collection. My favorite thing about it is that it's super underrated. Neil Schusterman wrote Scythe. Most people, immediately if they're just getting into like dystopia, they're probably going to run for Hunger Games or even Scythe. But Unwind is super low sci-fi. It's set in the real world. It's just advanced technology, and it's a lot of fun, and it really makes you think. All right, number 3, The Kingmaker's Daughter. So this is another Philippa Gregory book about Anne Neville, who became the wife of Richard III. And it's a father-daughter story. I really just felt such a connection with these 2 characters. Again, Philippa Gregory, if you saw my last video about The Worst, it's kind of a misnomer. She calls it a sister-sister story, but it's really not. It's a father-daughter story. She's the Kingmaker's daughter. The Kingmaker, I believe his name was Richard Neville. He put several kings on the throne of England, and he only had females. He had 2 daughters. So all the plans he would have had for himself and for his sons, he put on the backs of his daughters, and they had to carry that throughout their lives. Story of my life right there. But Anne Neville, not much is known about her. So I think she made a really good and ethical canvas for this historical fiction novel. It's set during the War of the Roses, and we really see the scheming and how people just kept changing sides. And I actually did a lot of research because I was like, what's the difference? Lancaster or York? Like, it really had nothing to do with politics or like really even who had the better claim. It was kind of just like you fought for whoever you liked best. Like, it was a personal thing. And some people got paid and they switched sides all the time. So if you're interested in the War of the Roses, definitely check this one out, but read The White Queen first. Do not make this one your first Cousins War novel. Number 3. It's New Year's! Happy New Year! Exactly. 1/1/2023, 12 a.m. Okay, continuing. So, Joan. It's the story of Joan of Arc, and I read this with my friend. He finished it way before I did, and we actually talk about it on our collab video, which I'll link. But basically, I've read a little bit of Wolf Hall by Hilary Mantel, and this book kind of felt like the author was like, oh, Wolf Hall, it won a Pulitzer Prize or a Booker Prize. I want that, but I'm going to write about Joan of Arc instead of Cromwell. But it was great. It was written in present tense, third person present tense. I really appreciated how little impact religion had on this. We see Joan have her complex partial seizure, but there's no like goofy images of heaven or like swelling, beautiful, flowery prose. It's like she passes out, wakes up, and thinks it was a sign from God. And it doesn't go all the way through her execution. It's her big victory at Orleans, and her relationship with the men in her life is obviously very feminist, because Joan, she didn't even pretend to be a male. Like, she was female, girl power all the way. Like, when you read stories of, like, female soldiers, usually they're dressing up as a man. But Joan of Arc didn't. Girl power. And it ended with such a bang that it's probably my favorite ending of the entire year. All right, number 1, disclaimer. This book is weird. I've talked about it before. I talked about it in my mid-year book tag challenge thing. It's Lincoln and the Bardo, about Willie Lincoln, the night he dies. The Bardo is kind of like the state between life and rebirth in specifically Tibetan Buddhism. And I have the book right here, so I'm just going to show you an example of what the pages look like. And I do own this book, even though it's library bound. I'm not sure how well that's focusing. Let me see real quick. Okay, but you see how it's written like this. It's very experimental. So it's almost like this is just dialogue, and then it's got the character who's saying it below. It's very, very odd, but it works. And there's actually some parts in here that were taken out of um real writings, and they've been cited right here. I mean, that's so cool. And I've been fascinated with Willie Lincoln for a long time. And I can't really even tell you why. Like, I don't know why I'm so fascinated with him, but he was Lincoln's 12-year-old son, 11 or 12-year-old son, who died of scarlet fever in the White House. So this is the story of Willie realizing he's dead and moving on to the next side, and all the sort of weird characters that are in the Bardo with him. Some of them know they're dead, some of them don't, but it's really, even though it's so weird, it's really readable. And as an American atheist, what the hell is the Bardo? Like, I mean, I had to research what the Bardo was, which was really cool. A lot of background went into this. So Lincoln and the Bardo by one of my heroes, George Saunders. He is king of the short stories, man. So best book I read all year. Weird, wacky, sad, gross, enlightening, thought-provoking, trippy. So that's it. Those are the 5 best books I read last year. because it's now 12:04 a.m. So, you guys, this has been a great year for me on BookTube. I finally got to 100 subscribers. Now I think I'm at like 122 or something. I don't know. But it's been a blast. I appreciate all my subscribers so much. I love you guys. And I hope you have a great 2023. So that's it for me. Keep reading, keep writing, keep loving words, and I'll see you next time. Bye.